வெண்ணாடும் தேவர்க்கும் மேலாய வேதியனை மண்ணாடும் மன்னவர்க்கும் மாண்பாகி நின்றானை தன்னார் தமிழளிக்கும் தன்பாண்டி நாட்டானை பெண்ணாடும் பாகனை பெணுபெருந்துறையில் கண்ணார் கடல் காட்டி நாயேனை ஆட்கொண்ட அண்ணாமலையானை பாடுதுங்கான் அம்மானாய் சித்தம் தெளிவீர்கள் அத்தன் ஆரூரை பத்தி மலர்த்தூவ முக்தியாகுமே. Vanakkam and a very good evening to you all. Very happy to welcome you all for the second session of Poojai Seimurai, a 3-day workshop aiming at discussing the art, science and methodology of Hindu worship. A quick recap of what we did yesterday. We started discussing about the meaning and purpose of prayer, considering it as a very serious commitment, as a conversation with the Almighty, and that praying and performing rituals is an ever-evolving process. We were also discussing about the concept of God, how he multiplies into many forms or manifests, how several religions across the world talks about one God who takes up different roles. And if it's different gods, so how exactly does that happen? Most importantly, we were discussing about the available different paths and how do we zero down upon something that we can follow. We concluded discussing about the sacred triangle, the 3D triangle, which has the divine, the devout, who are connected by devotion, and how our practices through prayers, rituals, festivals, and more enhances the divinity, the experience that you have, and which kind of brings out your devotion best, and how that reaches the Almighty. And so that's where we ended yesterday. Today's session is going to be the core area where we're going to be discussing about a simple ritual, a simple puja that you can adapt for yourself. Try and see, I'm just going to be giving only outlines, so you're free to customize it to your convenience and availability. But before that, we will have a detailed understanding of God, different gods according to Hindu belief system, and then go into the actual puja. So, gods of different genre. We have heard about gods whom we identify as our Ishtadevam. Now, as the name goes, it's that favorite god of mine. There will be this one particular deity or a particular temple which is very, very close to our heart. Needn't necessarily be something that we visit every day, but even a picture of that god somewhere in our house would kind of strengthen our faith. So there is this one particular god who is particularly very favorite, and we pray to him or her. So that is the concept of Ishtadevam. An Ishtadevam is to be put at par with your Kuladevam. Kuladevam is more like a family deity. In good probability, that temple might be situated in the native village or wherever you come from, or how many ever generations you can trace back and identify a temple to which your family was associated several generations back. These two deities are extremely important in our day-to-day life. In fact, some of the traditional texts suggest that you begin your day by offering a simple prayer to both your Kuladevam and your Ishtadevam. Any significant beginning should have a prayer offered to both these deities, your Kuladevam followed by your Ishtadevam. They are supposed to be thought about every day and in as many occasions as possible. Apart from a Kuladevam, who is more so for a community, you can also have a Kudumba Devam who is restricted to your family. Again, this in good probability might be an ancestor, a girl who died young. So these systems of worship are also a part and parcel of Hindu belief system. We identify them as Kudumba Devam, and they needn't have a temple or an altar. You can simply invoke their presence in a Purna Kumbham, or by just simply applying some turmeric on a wall and decorate it with kumkumam and offer flowers there, light a lamp, and you pray to this particular god or goddess, and you request her to be there for the moment, offer her whatever you got to, and in some cases it's dress materials and food that is to be offered to them, and you pray. And this kind of a prayer is also significant before any new beginning, before a housewarming or before someone gets married, before you start on a long journey. So in such occasions, you seek their blessings and request them to accompany you, stand by you. Yeah, so that is a Kudumba Deivam. And then you'll have that one particular deity who is more so like a guardian deity for the complete village, whom we call as Ur Deivam. These are the four very personalized gods that each of us will have for ourselves. You might have a few, might not have a few, might have all of them, but I'm sure there's no one in the audience who says they don't have any of these four. So considering or treating your Ishtadaivam and Kuladaivam very important is a mandate for believers. Even in your everyday puja, before you start your actual rituals for your puja or a prayer, it's again a duty on us to think for a moment about your Kuladaivam and Ishtadaivam, offer a simple namaskaram through your heart, and you just get connected with them, because it's a belief that it is that they are that we are. Yeah, so it's by their presence, by their blessings that we are enjoying all the benefits that we have in our hands. And when we face tough times, the immediate advice from elders or well-wishers would be to make a quick visit to this temple. In some cases, people, because of traveling across countries or settling elsewhere, and you lose touch with your roots, and a couple of generations later, you suddenly realize that you don't know who your Kuladaivam is. And there are traditional rituals that are performed, advised again, that you perform to understand or find out who your Kuladaivam is. That's pretty popular, and there are people who specialize in these kind of rituals, which helps you identify who your Kuladaivam is. And some cases they give you clues. Sometimes they tell you a particular direction. Sometimes they tell you that this is the god or goddess, and this direction in so many kilometers distance or miles distance, there is a temple dedicated. Go and find out from there. And I know several people, several families who've managed to spot this particular temple. In some cases, we have miracles where the god or goddess drops in your dream and tells you how your forefathers were so committed for the worship and how it's been forgotten in between, and they suggest that you get back to your roots. Similarly, an Ishtadaivam also, and you might suddenly feel a sense of connect when you visit a particular temple, or in some cases, you might be very happy to worship a particular form of God. So these two deities are extremely important, and worshipping them before any ritual is a mandate. Most cases, these deities will have a very unique form of worship. For example, a Kuladaivam would be a deity with whom you get connected. In fact, a few anthropological studies speaks about how a Kuladaivam needn't actually be a god or a miraculous happening. It might be a hero who sacrificed, or a heroine who sacrificed his or her life for the welfare of the whole village. So the whole village ends up worshipping her. There are cases where people who had sacrificed, quite literally sacrificed themselves by, chopping their head off before constructing a dam or digging a tank for the village, or when there is torrential rain and there's a threat of the whole village being flooded. One person comes forward to offer themselves to the guardian deities, and in return, they promise to protect the settlement. In such cases, a memorial stone is erected, and that is worship as a person who quite literally saved the whole village by offering himself or herself. So some of these worship protocols that are followed in these temples are quite unique in their own way. Once again, I personally feel that these rituals, whatever they are, however they are performed, are to be respected to the traditions that they are, and we should be following it. There is a trend of late for people to barge into certain traditions that they feel is not right, and would want to, promote a narrative to stop it. Now, that's something that we shouldn't be really dealing with. A tradition is a tradition, and it's a part and parcel of the heritage. Even if you don't believe in it, or you don't want to respect the tradition, or you don't feel like being a part of it, you can always walk out of it. We have a choice. But posing a threat to the tradition, or making an issue out of it, is something that should not be practiced, because a tradition has its own heritage values. When we think about non-living heritage, and it's after all tangible heritage, and traditions of that sort has got to be protected, if not respected at least. So there was a question by someone in the audience yesterday, a very interesting question about how these are to be looked upon. On one hand, you have Vedic worship, and the other hand, you have worship of local deities and gods and goddesses, which is very unique. They are like, starting from offerings, the way it is offered, the rituals that are performed, the chants that are made, and even aspects like, the kind of musical instruments that are played in these two, what looks like diametrically opposite traditions. The one seems to be very classical and evolved, and the other seems to be folk or rural in nature. Now, any culture will have both these ends and several others in between. Whichever you associate yourself with, that is what is for you, and that has got to be respected for all that it is. Yeah, comparing these traditions, finding out something to be more classical or calling it to be more evolved is something that is very personal at one's own level. I wouldn't really want to talk about whether it is right or wrong, because you cannot stop someone from calling something to be very unevolved otherwise too. But I would personally suggest that we respect the traditions for what they are. And if you're not able to follow it, as I said, we always have a choice to stay away from it. So considering one to be evolved and the other to be very rudimentary isn't something that is to be used for weighing the traditions as such they are. Yeah, I mean, considering the different civilizations that had happened on this earth and how each of it had changed itself, how it has managed to adapt itself, and how offerings in other cultures have been similar to what we do and very different from what we do. So there is a lot to do with human thought process, and how you consider God, how you perceive God, and it involves anthropology, it involves sociology, and various different disciplines of human evolution. That being said, each of it has its own value, and to me personally, it has got to be respected for what it is. Then comparing it or considering one to be more evolved or otherwise. So if you think that these gods are from different traditions, they will come as a package with different rituals and traditional schools that propagates a theory, and it has got to be respected for what it is. Modes of worship. Now, second part of the question was about whether there is a hierarchy in this. That again, I think I answered this question too, but I'd like to touch upon it because I found this question very, something that's got to be addressed with a lot of commotions happening about traditions to be followed or not. So there cannot be a hierarchy in devotion, because we have several episodes in our Itihasas and Puranas which speaks about how different devotees express their devotion in a very different way. We'll be seeing a few examples very soon. So that being said, end of the day, the connect that an individual has with a god is purely at an individual's level. So there cannot actually exist a hierarchy. If all that I'm able to offer is wild berries to the god, it just means that those are what I have access to as bestowed upon me by the god, by God. So, I mean, whatever he has given you, you're just trying to share the best out of it to him. Yeah, and accept what he gives you. So I think as we accept what he has given us, he'll be more than happy to accept what we offer. God will be more than happy to accept what we've got to offer in hand, because he, according to us, he knows it all. He knows the best, right? So when it comes to the mode of worship or what is being offered, how it is being offered, there cannot exist a hierarchy. How are these traditions different? Because each of it is from a different time, is from a different region, is from a different society for a different society. So, the cultural component that it is will have its own way of working in a different fashion. And that is exactly why and how they are different. How they are different? Well, certain traditions might involve you as a secondary element, where you just participate and someone else performs it for you, or you have a role to play and others have a different role to play, and all of it kind of culminates in performing the whole ritual. There can be traditions where you take up the main role, you offer things, you chant, you do it all. So it is completely, one is different from the other based on the practices and the modes of worship. But end of the day, the devotion that you have when it comes to offering, the quality of devotion than the quantity of offerings that you make, that really matters. interpretations of these different modes of worship, again, is at a very, very personal level. Animal sacrifices that are still in practice, that is there that you see in several temples, or getting possessed, entering a trance and worshipping the god as you enter a trance, or to actually enter a trance. And these are all traditions that are extremely age-old. And these are something that you see as common elements across several civilizations. Yeah, so trance especially, that's a part and parcel of temple worship system in a particular group of temples. And whether you approve of it or not, that's secondary, but interpreting it at one's own personal level would be a rewarding experience than talking about it in public and posing out your views. Yeah, so to respect other culture is something that everywhere in the world people talk about. And I think we should also follow it, because temple traditions and rituals are a part and parcel of our culture. So identifying one to be higher than the other, or one to be more evolved than the other, isn't something that we should be actually practicing. Devotion with a difference. I'm going to be just, reminding you of a few popular stories of devotees. I'm sure you would have heard of all of it, half a dozen of them. I'm just picking random examples to show how an individual connected with a god of his or her favorite, and expressed the devotion that he had. The one that immediately strikes to me is, of course, Kannappar, a very, very naive devotee, if I can say that. He was not exposed to gods. He didn't know who Shiva was. He didn't know what an offering is. He didn't know what God was. He was from a tribal community. He was, he was well trained in hunting, and he was on his first hunting spree. And that's when he got to see this random Shivalingam in a forest. The moment he saw the deity, something just attracted him towards it. He lost his self. He lost the, he forgot the agenda that he had in hand. He felt pity that the god is all by himself, because he saw Shiva sitting there. It was not a simple murti that was installed. He didn't look at it as stone. He didn't look at it as murti. He saw Shiva there in all his form, his complete form. And he was very sure that it might not be a very safe idea to leave Shiva all by himself, because it was it was quite a thick jungle that the temple was in. And there was no temple. The deity was just there with sky as his roof. So he wanted to treat him as he would treat himself. So the next day morning, he managed to perform an abhishekam to the god, but he didn't have a kalasam in hand to collect water. So he gargled some water in his mouth, managed to, store some water in his throat and mouth, came over to the shrine and just spit it on the Shivalingam to give him a bath. Yeah, and his hands were filled with food offerings to be made, because he eats pork. All that he could do was prepare pork and chew some bits of it to ensure that it was well cooked before offering it to Shiva. And those chunks that he tasted already, which he considered were juicy enough to be offered, were what was offered to him. Flowers, he managed to get some wild flowers, because his hands were full holding the prepared meat. He managed to plant those flowers on his hair locks, brought them to the shrine, spit the water that he had in his mouth to give him a bath, shaked his head so the flowers that were on his head could fall on Shiva, finally offered the meat that he had in his hand. The next day, when Shiva wanted to prove his love to a priest, the drama that happened there, and the way Shiva's, the sport that Shiva played there to prove to the world who Kannappa was, is pretty well known. Now, this is devotion without expecting anything. This is devotion without understanding what or who it was. He just had love for God. That's absolutely what he had got. Now, you might take some lessons from it, but there are also possibilities that people would want to end up telling that they would want to do what they like to do to the gods. Now, nobody can stop you in today's, the kind of condition that we have. Nobody can stop you in doing what you want at your personal level, in your personal shrine, but demanding that it gets transferred to temples or places which are bound by norms is something that cannot happen. If you want to treat Shiva as Kannappa did and offer whatever you like, you should also be ready to offer your eyes, when Shiva's, like Kannappa, when Shiva's eyes was bleeding. Now, when we cannot do that, then it just means that we cannot go around offering all that Kannappan offered. Now, coming to the next story of this very popular woman who prayed and wanted to be blessed with a very gory form of a demon. Peyar, as she is called. Karaikal Ammayar, because Shiva addressed to her as his mother. The love that she had for Shiva was, just incomparable. She was fond of feeding Shiva devotees who visited her. So she was from a wealthy community. And one day, Shiva came down as a devotee and walked into her house only to be fed by her. She served whatever food that was ready then. And then several miracles unfolded. And she was married, and her husband, witnessing all these miracles happen, felt that there is something very special about her and moved away from her. Later that she realized that he had already gotten married to another woman, and there was a daughter who was named, who shared her name. She felt that enough is enough, and her duty to, be that very a loving and caring wife was over. At that moment, she requested Shiva that all her youth and beauty is just dropped, and she preferred that she becomes skinny and bony and wanted to take the form of a demon. She walked her way to Kailasha, and Shiva introduced her to Devi as his mother. What would be more touching? Her devotion again. Then we have this Vaishnavite saint, an Alvar, named as Kulasekara. He was a king from the Chera dynasty, ruling from Kerala. He was a staunch devotee of Rama that he had Pauranikas appointed to narrate Ramayana every day in his kingdom. He would be in audience, and he was so engrossed in the narration of Ramayana that when there were scenes which spoke about Sita being abducted by Ravana, or Rama, expressing his worry over missing Sita, Kulasekara would become furious. He would stop the narration and would command that his army is ready to march to Sri Lanka to fight to get back Sita. That was his devotion. He forgets that the Pauranika is, after all, talking a Puranam, which is like episode that had happened long back. He's only bringing out the accounts, and he's so engrossed, he's so involved in it that he cannot accept Rama feeling sorry. I mean, Rama's sorrow is something that he would want to share. And he said, like, if I don't go in now, march in now to help him, who will be there? I cannot put up with Rama being sad. So he commanded his army to start marching towards Sri Lanka. That was his devotion. Then we have the most unique of all the Nayanmars, Sakya Nayanar. He was a Sakya, a Buddhist initially. Then when he understood that all his questions couldn't be answered by Buddhist philosophy, he shifted. He heard about Shaiva Siddhanta, and he thought this is true knowledge. Yeah, so he had his questions answered here. But those were the times when people from other religions, especially Shaivites, were prosecuted because Buddhism was the ruling religion then. The kings were so fanatic that they went around prosecuting people who were non-believers of Buddhism. So, and he also, he was not sure whether he could do it, and he was a part of a Buddhist vihara then. So every day on his way to the vihara, he would stop by a Shivalingam, an abandoned Shivalingam in fact, pick some pebbles from around and offer it. He starts stoning the Shivalingam, quite literally. But for people who saw it from outside, thought that he, being a Buddhist, he's stoning the Shivalingam. For him, every stone that he offered was a fragrant flower. So every stone was a flower that he offered, and Shiva, knowing it best, who's all knower, considered that to be a Pushpa Archana that was performed by one of his very close devotees. So devotion can be of very different form, and it's purely on how you connect with your God and what you see as the best that can be offered to him. If it's just a cup of water that you can offer, well, you can do it. Forms of gods. We have references to gods like Indra, Agni, Varuna, Rudra, who are all mentioned in Vedas. They're all considered as people who contribute towards the upkeep of the universe. They all have a role to play to ensure that the human beings are comfortable living here. You have the planets, you have the sun and the moon. They all have their roles to perform and to play. So they do it regularly. They're very regular about it. And when there is a disturbance in it, it ends up being catastrophic. So the Vedic deities are to be worshipped too. But there are other gods also who are quite popular, referred to in the Vedas. And then you have these gods who are identified in the Vedic scriptures as the ones who created the other devatas too. Rudra or Maheshwara or Shiva is referred to as the ultimate god in few sections of the Vedas. And then you have various interpretations where other gods like Mahavishnu is identified as Narayana, the one who rules the universe, to whom the other devatas take command, from whom the other devatas take their commands from. So you have different deities who are identified for different roles that they play, and they are to be prayed and propitiated for whatever their roles are. Apart from these, you have regional, traditional, and local deities too. And you have different ways of worshipping these different gods. Vedic gods are worshipped in a particular way. Agamic deities in temples, Devi or Vishnu, Subramanya, Parameshwara, Ganesha, they're all worshipped in a way which is prescribed in the Agamas. Regional deities and traditional deities have their own traditional ways of worship too. And each of them have a grammar for their form and the functions that they perform. And depending on their forms, they hold their weapons, they have their vahanas, their look, their complexion, their hairstyle, the ornaments that they wear, the kind of robes that they use, all of it changes. So in order to worship a deity, the deity's form has got to be understood first. Yeah, the Murti Tattva, as it is called, the iconography of a deity. Only based on that, you get to know what is to be offered to the deity and how the deity has got to be worshipped. So before starting your actual worship system, you'll have to have a thorough understanding of the god that you've chosen to worship, because each of them have multiple different forms. Ganesha, for example, has 16 different forms. Parameshwara has 25 Maheshwara Murtas, and you have 64 forms of Shiva also. Devi manifests into multiple different forms. So does Mahavishnu. So does Subramanya. So any deity you choose, you will have to look out for a particular form of the deity. And each of the form has its own grammar, a dhyana slokam, a time to be worshipped, and how you worship it. Also, what is the benefit that you reap out of worshipping a particular form of a deity? Even if it is Shiva, how do you exactly worship a Lingamurti? How do you worship a Somaskandamurti? How you worship a Bhikshatana or Veerabhadra or Nataraja? Each of it has its own set standards, and you'll have to have an in-depth understanding of the iconography before thinking about performing a puja. Then you have, in general, there is like a group of 3 divine beings to whom we are all indebted to. So we call these as Moondru Kadangal, or 3 people to whom you are in debt. Devatas, the gods who are to be worshipped, followed by the Rishis, or the seekers, the seers, the most knowledgeable ones, who've had their own experiences with the gods. And then your Pitru, or your ancestors. These are the 3 people to whom we are in debt, and all these 3 needs to be worshipped. To the Devatas, you worship through your rituals, your visits to temple, and more. To Rishis, we offer our worship through our acharyas or through your gurus. Yeah, and the best way to seek their grace is to offer a handful of water, chanting the names of gurus starting from the most recent one. Now, if you are a part of an acharya parampara, you've taken your diksha from an acharya. And by the way, all Hindus, irrespective of our caste community differences, will have a particular school to which we are associated. Yeah, we would have lost touch of it. Many of us would have lost touch of it, but be informed, irrespective of your caste or community, we will have an acharya parampara or an acharya pitam to which we are connected. Re-establishing that connect and keeping in touch with them is first and foremost duty for any Hindu. If you're not sure about who it is, try and see, the acharya who's generally the acharya for other people in your community. Or if you don't have any such references, go ahead, get to read about the available options and try and see if you can get connected to one of the Acharya Pitams. Nothing like being connected to an Acharya Paramparai and taking their traditions as yours. If you've lost touch, if you don't know about it for several generations, no harms. You in fact have a privilege to choose from, and it is always a very healthy habit for Hindus especially to be connected to a particular Acharya Pitam. So through them, we reach out to the rishis who've helped us and our family. Then we, of course, have our ancestors, and we worship them by offering a handful of food to the crows on almost every day before you take your lunch. Or at least, if that is not possible, once in a while when you visit sacred places or temples, try and see if you can offer food to people who are in need, or the bound duty of annual services that we do through Shraddham or whatever you call it, in your family. Being very regular with that is another rule that's more like a mandate. So, you will have to ensure that you don't have anything left behind by not performing these. So, the Devatas, the Rishis, and the Pitru. So, the Kadam that you own to the deities, the Rishis, and the Pitrus. All these three are to be maintained at a zero balance stage. Then we have something called as three different entities to be worshipped: Guru, Linga, and Sangama, as we call it in Shaivite tradition. God has got to be worshipped. Then you have the devotees who are also to be worshipped. Then you have Acharya who is to be worshipped. Now there is absolutely no difference between these three people who are to be worshipped. They are the worshipful ones. Shiva has got to be worshipped. The Shivalinga Poojai that you do, the Shiva Poojai that you do. It is believed that Bhaktas are none but Shiva himself. So you will have to consider Bhaktas as Shiva himself. In fact, Tirumula beautifully explains how Bhaktas are none but movable temples. They are temples on heels. So they are, because they carry Shiva within them. So they've enshrined Shiva within them. So it just means that their body is a temple by itself. In fact, he goes on to say, please take care of your body, because Shiva's temple should not be allowed to be dilapidated. Yeah, to ensure that you're hale and healthy, because it's Shiva's temple that you are, and you cannot allow it to dilapidate. So requesting bhaktas to visit your home, welcoming them home, offering a puja as much as you do to Shiva himself, giving them an asana or a seat to sit, washing their feet, drawing a nice kolam in front of them, offering food to them. It's when you feed devotees, please be informed it is not annadanam. You're not doing any charity. When you're feeding devotees, it means you're worshipping Shiva. It's Shiva Puja. It's in fact called as Maheshwara Puja in Shaivite tradition. And the Vaishnavites call it as Thadi Aradhana. Thadiyas or Bhaktas of Mahavishnu. So it is worshipping Thadiyas or the Bhaktas. So either ways, Shaivites and Vaishnavites consider it as a worship to God himself. So we request them to come on a day that suits both of us. In fact, if they come as couple, they are to be worshipped as Shiva and Parvati themselves. There is absolutely no difference in it. And if they come with their kids, go ahead and consider them to be Ganesha and Subramanya. Nothing like inviting a couple home and requesting them to take food. So we offer them a seat, draw a kolam in front of them to place a leaf on which they are served, and you actually have lamps lit on either sides. Yeah, but you serve all the delicacies that you've prepared with utmost respect. Offer dhupam and deepam and actually do an archana to them. Yeah, you offer flowers to them and request them to take the food that is offered, and you stand by and serve them with utmost love and care. And finally, after they wash their hands, again offer them a seat, give them tambulam and gifts that they would use. Generally, in a Maheshwara Puja, we offer dress that they can use for their puja, like veshti or a pudavai, and we give them good well-prepared vibhuti in a vibhuti pai that they can use. Rudraksham can be given, books on Shiva, Puranas, Tirumurai books, or vessels that they can use for their puja. All these can be gifted. I mean, there is no mandate in that. Whatever you can give. So but this is like as much as doing a proper Shiva Puja. You request Shiva to come in there, you offer him a seat, then you perform all the Abhishekams and Dubam, Deepam, Naivedyam, and finally offer whatever best you have and request him to accept it and seek his blessings. Finally, we also prostrate in front of them, take their blessings. And please be informed, there is no age restriction in this. There is no caste or community barrier in this, or there is no social differences in it. If a Shaivite is potted with the Vibhuti and Rudraksham that he wears, irrespective of their age, irrespective of what is the kind of social strata that they belong to, economic strata that they belong to, they are to be treated as Shiva and we worship them. So worshipping Maheshwara is only secondary, but what is more important is worshipping the Maheshwaras, who are devotees of Shiva. Then we have Acharyas, who are none but Shiva himself. The form of lingam in a temple, because it's a murti and there are constraints, he does not answer our queries quite literally. He does not open his mouth to talk to us. In order to fill that space, he manifests as an Acharya whom you can connect to whom you can actually converse and you can get your replies. He speaks out to you quite literally. So that's the only difference between the murti in a temple and your Acharya. So Devatas, Bhaktas, and Acharya, God's devotee and your teacher, your guru, are all to be worshipped at par. We have going to be discussing a puja space at 3 different levels. There is no text which speaks about the first level. This is something that I conceived for myself and I found it to be useful and beneficial. So I just thought I'll share with it. Apart from a puja space that you have at your home, where all your family members get together and worship, I personally feel a very, very simple personalized space where you just have a small murti of your personal choice is not a bad idea. On your table, yeah, which is your personal space, or if you just have a small closet, which is your personal space, or if you're a homemaker and the kitchen, you have your personalized kitchen space, a small counter where you can have a small image of a god or a goddess of your choice to whom you can connect at any moment without any restrictions. When I say any restrictions, it just it just includes anything that you can think about as a restriction. Yeah, a very, very personalized space, which is just for you. You didn't have elaborate decorations there. You didn't have a lamp lit always, or you didn't, in fact, consider how clean you are to worship. But that space, that murti to whom you can connect at a personal level, is something that is very, very, beneficial. It has been very beneficial to me. So I'm just sharing this. So go ahead and try and see if you can just have one small space in your work area, in your counter or your cabin, your car probably. So, whatever is the most convenient for you, a small space for your God to whom you can converse whenever you want to whom you can connect whenever you want to, is something that we can all have. Yeah, it is very, very effective, much more effective, in fact, than your prayer space, your puja room, if I can call it by that name. Why is this needed? Yes, to have a personalized space, it just means that you have some space where you can be yourself, right? This is one such space where you can be yourself. Yeah, you can sit in a comfortable chair in your workplace and then still connect with him. You can call him all nicknames as you want and just speak your heart out to him or her. It can be a small murti, a picture, or anything abstract that you think is the best form that you can connect with. Go ahead and have one for yourself. And in like a month's time, I'm sure you would see a difference in it. But ensure that the form that you choose is something that you can very personally connect to. It's worked out quite successful to me, and I'm sure it would do to you. This is the first level for a puja space. Second level is something that we all have in common, a puja room, puja array as we call it. Now, there are very strict norms about where in a house you can have it, how big can it be, which direction the deities are to be facing, and more. And these are areas in which we all have our doubts. At the beginning level, I would like to say there is no restrictions about how small or how big it can be. The restrictions which speaks about the directions aren't quite directly given in any text, but there are prescriptions made in practices. Yeah, please get this right. There is no book which says that you cannot have a shrine facing in this direction, because there are shrines in various different directions, because God looks in all directions. Parameshwara has faces in all directions. So does Subramanya, so does Devi, so does Mahavishnu too. There are temples which are south facing, east, west, north, northeast, whatnot. But when it comes to a puja room in your house, we do have these belief systems which speaks about how east, which is the direction of the rising sun, is considered to be more auspicious than any other. Then there we have actually a hierarchy which says that this is the most appropriate direction. This is only secondary. This is the third option, and the fourth if you don't have any. So of the 4 directions that we have in hand, thanks to God, it is only 4. All 4 are accepted. Only that the best one is the east, followed by west, followed by north, and finally the south. So if you have no other choice at all than to have a room which is south facing and that it is convenient to actually sit and worship there, please go ahead. Worshipping God can never bring any bad luck. Yeah, there is no text which says you cannot have a murti enshrine facing south, or you cannot sit facing south. In fact, Shaivite tradition demands the best direction is to have a murti facing south and you sit facing north. That is the face of Shiva, which bestows jnana on you. Yeah, directions are what are relative, or something that he is given. It's not a standard norm. He's created it for our convenience, and they don't make sense once you're out of it. So if you think that south is the only possible direction where you can have your puja space in the most convenient way, please go ahead and have it. Absolutely nothing stops you. But if you feel that you're not convenient with it, or you're not convinced with it, try and see if there can be a comfortable east or a west or a north, and then just go ahead with it. Yeah, don't force yourself to choose your car garage to be your puja room, because the space inside your house is not facing, and this is the only available option. Yeah, I think the convenience of sitting in a puja room is much more needed than being worried about the direction that you get to face at that moment, and if it would bring in bad luck. There are norms, in fact, in traditional construction manuals, which speaks about where in a house a puja room can be. Yeah, the northeast corner is the most preferred. In fact, the first preference is to the central space, the central courtyard, or if not, the northeast or the east or the north. There again, you have almost all the directions given in a list and says this is rank 1, rank 2, rank 3, and it just goes on. So they've been very clear about giving us accommodating all possible directions, just that a few are considered to be best choices. Now, these texts, believe me, were authored in a time where ground plus 1 construction was a luxury. When we really didn't think about skyscrapers, or a 20th story apartment where we would be living is not discussed in any of these traditional manuals. When you're so high, and in fact, these manuals demand that you are connected directly to the ground, yeah, when you are doing all these pujas. Yeah, a first floor puja by itself means that you've lost your connect with the ground. You are somewhere in the middle of the air. Yeah, you're mid-air. So, when you're ready to do your puja there, don't worry much about which direction or which part. Again, this is a personal take. To me personally, thinking about, a very constrained room where you'll have to walk in and come back, you'll have to take reverse and come back. That being in a Vastu approved area inside your house in a Vastu approved direction would be a second choice for me to choose a room which is probably the second or the third ranking, with respect to the direction and the part of your house, but which is well lit, well ventilated, and comfortable to sit and do your puja. Yeah, I would go for the second choice than facing a constraint, sitting in a space which is narrow and dim lit. And considering that to be a better choice because it is in a direction which is suggested. So it is on you to think about your convenience to finalize these places. Size, form of the roof, and the direction. Yeah, the size, again, it's absolutely on you. But try and see if you can consider God not as the last choice for a space to be allotted. After taking all the available spaces for you and your family, putting God as last in the list of members for space allocation, try and see if you can not do it. I mean, he's been with us, he's going to be there through, and we are believers. We think that keeping him happy is our duty. In that case, giving him a space which is comfortable to him, which we think would be comfortable to him, is something that we can consider. The most important part is the aesthetics. I mean, I really cannot comment anything on the size of your puja room. Sometimes it just ends up being on a shelf. Sometimes it can be an elaborate room all by itself with all the constraints that we have, space constraints that we have today, and the economics that comes with real estate. I think what best we can do is what we can do. Yeah. So even if it's a countertop or a small shelf in your kitchen or a space in your in your closet, it's still fine. He's happy to reside there. Just that, try and see if you can keep it clutter free. You can keep it just very brief if your space is limited. Number of pictures or number of idols does not really play a role in enhancing your experience with him. In fact, minimalist puja spaces, me being an interior designer by profession, the trend today is to have a good looking puja space which is minimalist in nature, well lit. Even one murti is enough, one picture is enough if your space is just a shelf that you've got, than going around collecting pictures of various gods and goddesses from almost every temple that you visit, keep them staggered one on top of the other, literally one on the other, or finding it tough. So inserting small photographs into a bigger frame, I mean, you needn't really do that. The number of gods is not going to increase your blessings that cannot be quantified at any point of time. But if you think that's the way it works, the number of pictures is not going to help you increase your blessings within quotes. So keep it as simple as possible. If you have space constraints, you need to have way too many objects or articles for worship. It can be just one lamp. It is still fine as long as it is neat and well maintained, and the space is just crisp and well lit. It's more than enough. So the aesthetics part of it certainly plays a role in which the way you connect with it. Aesthetics needn't be very expensive. Aesthetics needn't mean that it can work on a big space alone. It can be very, very simple with just one small murti and two lamps lit on either sides and still be beautiful. Our traditional school of aesthetics suggests that your puja spaces are symmetrical in nature. That's exactly why we end balancing puja articles when you set up an altar. When you have a lamp on one side, which is still fine, there is always a trend in us to, it's more like a practice to have it balanced on the other side with a similar looking lamp. Yeah. So going for a mirror image and maintaining a visual balance in the setup is something that we always prefer. The reason why the puja mandapam or the murti is kept in the geometric center, and everything that you have otherwise, like offerings being made or lamps being lit or toranam that is tied, we go in for a symmetry. Because Indian architecture, Indian arts, Indian aesthetics consider having a mirror line in between and having objects balanced on either sides is believed to achieve not just visual balance, but that is considered to be the best way to balance your inner emotions too. Today in contemporary design, and rather post-contemporary design as we call it now, deconstruction and going for asymmetrical balance is the norm. It's interesting to note some of these modern schools of philosophy and religion, where they come up with temple design, which is very modern in approach, suggest that we go for asymmetrical designed altar spaces. That again is left to you. Traditionally, we prefer symmetrical design spaces, which has its own comfort factor that comes along with it. Yeah, so it is visually balanced. Anything which is visually balanced is believed to bring in a sense of balance from within too. Your emotions are also balanced because that's a prerequisite to have a successful puja session. Again, nobody can ever comment on the size of your puja altar or the kind of materials that you offer, because thankfully our traditions say that earthen pots are the best utensils that you can have to offer food. Yeah, clay pots or clay dishes, earthen utensils are in fact the first preferred choice to make your offerings. Of course, if you can afford to, nothing stops you from having golden vessels made, but anything in between is also accepted. Timber is accepted. Wooden trays or wooden vessels are also accepted. And try and see if you can avoid metals like aluminum or materials like plastic. Reason being, they are not a part of our aesthetics, traditional Indian aesthetics. So iron and steel have their own, conditions. They have their own qualities which are not considered fit for a puja. A reason being, water stored in an iron tumbler, for example, is not what is palatable, right? You wouldn't want to use a tumbler made out of pure iron to drink your water because it gets contaminated over years of usage. So that which can remain pure always is what is prescribed to be offered. Keep it simple like this. Whatever you would use for yourself is what is the best that you can offer to your gods and goddesses. Yeah, that's the most easiest way, in fact, to choose the kind of materials that you can. Brass, bronze, silver, copper, all these are accepted because we would have like our own food being prepared in such vessels and eating or using such vessels, right? So a simple thumb rule would be to choose materials that you would be happy to use for yourself, or more so, as my guru would say, that material that we would be happy to use for our kids. Because the first step is to treat or consider God as your own child. And so that's one way to start with, because that is where you take utmost care. Yeah, the best of what you can offer is what you would want your children to use. You would compromise for any other relationship, but certainly not for your children. The love and care and affection that you shower on your own children is what you should be showering on the gods whom you worship. So whatever you choose would be the best to be used by your kids is what is to be shared with the gods also. So what all do I have there? A puja room need not be very elaborate and have a copy of or a picture of all gods that you know. Yeah, sometimes you get pictures of gods in various different sizes as gifts. Yeah, if you really think you have space for it, please go ahead and have it. If you don't have space for it, try and see if you can just give it over to someone who could use it. There is absolutely nothing wrong in it. If you have space, please go ahead and use it. If you don't know what to do with it, and it's a beautiful, nice frame, and you don't know how to put it to the best use, try and see if any temple can have it, or if a puja matam can have it, or a mandali can use it, or a school can use it. If nothing works out, go ahead and gift it to a friend who you think would actually use it, or ask them. Please don't think that all the divinity that has been stored in your house so long is going to go with that picture. Yeah, those are kind of conditioned thoughts. God wants to reside in your house. He's going to reside irrespective of whether you want to send the picture out or gift it to someone else. Yeah, these are constraints that which we have framed for ourselves with absolutely no proof to back it up. None of the old traditions speak about it or nothing like that actually. So as long as you've not installed it in your house or worshipped it for some time, please don't mind gifting photo frames or icons or murtis that you've received as gift and that you cannot put to proper use. Secondly, try and decide your space, whatever is best available. Accommodate pictures as comfortable as your space can hold. Yeah, try and see if you can maintain some amount of symmetry and aesthetics in planning your puja space. Most importantly, keep it as clean as possible, however frequent it is required. Because traditional housing code books in India, Vastu and other codes which speaks about interior design and other things, quite clearly says that a space with cobwebs, a house which is filled with such dirt, emanates with negative energy and nothing positive can ever happen there. Yeah, so just take it like this. You wouldn't want to sleep on a mattress which is dirty. Yeah, you wouldn't mind sleeping on an empty floor which is clean than a bed which is filled with dirt, right? Treat the gods at par with you. Yeah, any upacharam that we do, I think today's session we might not be able to cover a simple puja ritual. Nevertheless, we can do it tomorrow. But let's get our basics, clear. So just treat the gods as you would treat yourself. A puja space with cobwebs, a big nice space with cobwebs that you cannot maintain is not a good idea compared to a smaller space that you can maintain better. Yeah, cleaning it and keeping it bright and fresh is like a first thumb rule. I've seen several puja rooms that works out of a small shelf in their kitchen. It's perfectly fine as long as it is kept clean with old flowers being removed off and fresh flowers being offered. Nothing like having a small space which is manageable for us. Yeah, so basic hygiene that we would want to follow for ourselves is what is to be undoubtedly extended to the gods. Another common question that many of my friends have asked me is about having a vigraham. We are all comfortable having framed images of God for our puja. We are also fascinated by Vigraha Aradhanam. We see our friends, and today's context, where different murtis are available in different sizes and all that. How about having one for myself? That's something that all of us have as a doubt. Let me tell you, it's been a tradition to almost all Hindu households to have a murti to worship, made out of stone or timber or metal. A murti was a part and parcel of every household, irrespective of your caste, community, social, economical, cultural barriers. If you feel you can be committed in worshipping a murti, go ahead and have it. Just ensure that the murti is of a manageable size. Being fascinated by really huge ones, different and unique murtis, is something that we all fall for a trap. Then we think about constraints. We buy one, we make one for ourselves, bring him home with all. We are very happy to house the deity there. We take care of it, and after some time, maybe a couple of months or weeks, we just realize that our commitments otherwise are too pressing, and we are not able to really take care of the murti. That is when the problem starts. So if you're really wanting to have one, please go ahead and have. There is absolutely no norm which says you cannot have a murti at home. Every practicing Hindu can have a murti at home. Just ensure you think a lot about long-term commitment to hold on to the murti and treat him with the same love, care, and affection as you had when he first walked in till the end of your life. Or at some point, at least think about a person to whom you can hand over the murti and ensure he is taken care of if you cannot do it. Without these in mind, please don't end up buying huge vigrahams. A murti is possible for all of us to have. But just ensure that the size and the form of the god is something that you can really maintain by yourself. Norms for murti aradhanam. Different murtis have their own different norms. I can help you with your personalized traditions if you want to, even after the session. But tomorrow we'll be discussing a simple standard puja procedure that you can probably follow, something that I've helped with my friends. That takes close to 20-25 minutes once you've mastered it for a murti aradhanam. And this is just kind of custom made and traditions borrowed from various different schools of thought and compiled that can help you connect with the murti to begin with. This procedure that we'll be discussing tomorrow is a starter's guide kinds. Your commitment and your love for the murti will ensure that you end up in a proper acharya's place and take up a well laid out and a traditional mode of worship for your murtis. So for today, just be informed, having a murti for yourself is, there is no restriction which says, no, you cannot have it. Your food habits or nothing actually stops you from having a murti. Nothing at all. Have one for yourself, whichever form that you can connect with. The lesser the number of arms or heads, the easy it is to worship. The more the number of arms, the more the number of heads, the worship procedures become a little complicated. So that's again something for you to choose. The lesser the weapons, the easy the murti for. This image of Krishna as Pandurangan that you see in this slide is the murti of a good friend of mine, a Sanskrit professor. And so he is from the Premika Sampradayam, as it is called. And so there's this where they envision Krishna as Paramatma, and so they sing and dance for him. They love him and they take care of him. So they all have a murti for themselves. Thanks to the entrepreneurial attempts by few companies where they have come up with beautiful jewelry, accessories, if I can call it by that name, for your household murtis also. And it is all available online today. So people just buy those and have their good time with the gods and goddesses. So another question, okay, I'm happy to buy one. I think I can take care of the murti. what shall I do when I travel? I have my professional travels, I have my leisure travels, I have my family travel plans. That is exactly why I say, invest your time and energy on a murti, which is small and easy to carry wherever you go. How exactly do I worship it when when I travel? I'm sure you're going to stay in a place which is comfortable to you, right? That just means that your murti will be happy to stay with you wherever you go. I'm sure the place that you stay will have a small closet for yourself, even if you're traveling. Yeah, in a train, you can have a small bag in which you carry him. Just open the bag, feed him for the day, offer him fruits, offer him pori or kadalai. That is still enough. Yeah, just tell him that, well, I'm traveling and this is best I can. Take this and stay with me. That's more than enough for a prayer. Or if you think you have someone at home who can take care of him in your absence, it's as much as leaving your kids to your parents when you really cannot take them along. Just ensure that they would offer fruits to him and just light a lamp and pray to him in your absence. That's more than enough too. The love that you have for your murti can enhance your religious faith and strengthen it and make it so strong. Nothing like having a murti for yourself. And that is how my good friend puts him to bed. There's a small, mosquito net bed that is available in market. I was told. I was really moved by it. He gives him all nice massage before putting him to bed, and there's these little pillows. And let me tell you, once winter is set, he has made a nice sweater for him and a monkey cap with which he is dressed. Yeah, so that's exactly how you treat your murti. Now, starting from preparations for puja and how you actually do a puja and what you do when you visit temples and other things, I think I'm going to push it for tomorrow's session. That's actually in syllabus for tomorrow's session. So we will, today we've talked about having a murti, and I'm sure, I think I've convinced you to have a murti for yourself and have a simple puja room if you cannot really have an elaborate ones. Just take care of your deities. Tomorrow, we will discuss about a simple and straightforward puja, which just involves like 20 or 25 minutes of your time once you know it, and about praying together, and more importantly about praying in a temple. That will be in discussion for tomorrow. With that, I'd like to conclude today's session. மூர்த்தி எல்லாம் வாழி எங்கள் மோன குரு வாழி அருள் வார்த்தை என்றும் வாழி அன்பர் வாழி பராபரமே. எல்லாம் ஸ்ரீ தியாகராஜ கிருபை. ஸ்ரீ தியாகராஜ மகாராஜோ விஜயதே. ஆரூரா தியாகேஷா. Thank you. I'd like to take questions from Kasturi Bhai Sundaresan. There is a common perception which says that one who prays towards God or goddess who are deemed to be fierce, like Kali, will also acquire similar attributes. Please demystify this myth. I think the myth that I have to demystify here is that Kali or deities of that sort are fierce in nature. Let me tell you, a deity with multiple arms, with eyes that is popping out, or a mouth that is wide open with her tongue falling out, is fearful to people who disturb her devotees. They look, a devotee will never fear that form of a god or a goddess. Nrasimha is the most handsome of all for Andal, who fell in love with him. Yeah, he's in fact called as Alagiya Singan, the one who is really handsome. Yeah, so you can treat Kali as your daughter. In fact, the tantric text suggests that Kali, describes Kali as a little girl who is so fond of her devotees that she would go to any extent to stand by them, to support them, she'd be ready to sacrifice herself to protect you. That's being the most powerful kid ever. Yeah, I think the myth part there is considering Kali to be a very fearful deity. That's not the case at all. And if at all there are attributes that you would acquire, it's that motherly love, care, and affection that Kali has on her devotees. Yeah, so I think the myth is in the first part of the question, in fact. Yesterday, you mentioned that Vishnu and Narayana are not one but different entities. Please elaborate further. Okay, so according to Vaishnava traditions, Narayana as a name just means the one who is the Adharam for all the living beings in this universe. Vishnu, on the other names other hand, means that the one who is a Vaishnavite. So for the Vaishnavites who would like to envision the Almighty as Narayana, this name and the form that comes with it means that he is the leader of the universe. The other hand, Vishnu is not as explanative as the name Narayana. So Vishnu is the Almighty form who sits in Vaikunta. I mean, Narayana, I'm sorry. Narayana is that form of Vishnu who sits in Vaikunta, who manifests into Vishnu to perform the duty of protecting his creation along with Brahma and Rudra. That's how the difference is to be understood. From Anand K, how and where to find our Acharya Pedam? Unclear on that. If you have your family traditions still intact, you can go ahead and reinstate your lost relationship with your Acharya Pedam. If you don't have that, with all the available sources today, try and see which is that school of thought to which you can feel committed to which you feel belong to. Start visiting the Acharya Pedam there. Yeah, today I think most of them are quite out there in social media also. You can get in touch with them, get to know about their activities, get their publications and read about it, or read about the tradition. Start following them through their lectures and sermons that they deliver and other things. I'm sure developing a love for your Acharya that way, whoever is the one to whom you can associate to, will fetch you a connect with him or her. Yeah, so the easiest way is to start listening to them, reading about them, and visiting them whenever possible. Just visit as a newcomer. There's nothing wrong in it. Yeah, wherever the Pedam is, yeah, you can start visiting it and getting to know about it. And I'm sure Acharya's grace will one day get you introduced to him. From Vinodini, if one decides to accept the Lord himself or his incarnations as the Manasika Guru, is it acceptable? In cases where you don't have a touch with your Acharya, you can certainly accept the Murti to which you associate yourself as Acharya. In fact, here for Shaivites, if we don't know who our Acharyan is, we take the Dakshina Murti's form to be our Guru, and we start our prayer, any ritual, after worshipping Ganesha and your Guru. So if you don't know who your Guru is, go ahead and worship Dakshina Murti. Request him to help you find a Guru, and those prayers are certainly answered. Regarding associating oneself with an Acharya Pedam, I'm personally inclined towards Shaiva Siddhantam and have been undertaking classes to grow my knowledge. I see several devotees of Dharma Adinam, and while I understand that Peruman comes as Guru when a certain Pakva Nilai is attained, it feels to me as a woman that the Acharya Pedam space is very male-centric. The prayers and events always seem to only involve male devotees. Please, could you clarify how women I can grow in my chosen path and access such a space irrespective of gender? Now that you've actually pointed out an Adhinam to which I'm associated, to which I'm a Sishya too, I should clarify here, Dharma Adhinam also had a tradition of giving sannyasa to women devotees. That was happening till such times when having a separate monastery for women was possible. Then with the changing garment setups and problems that were faced, the tradition has been forgotten. But I'll have to clarify here, there are innumerable number of women devotees who've been given Dikshay, and the Dikshay that is performed is pretty much same. I mean, it is actually exactly the same to the Dikshay that is given to the male devotees. On any given day, you can, on the days that which the Dikshay is given, the Shaiva Dikshay is given, you are more than welcome to the Adinam, get yourself registered prior and get your Dikshay from the Adina Kartar, from Guru Maha Sannidhanam, and you are in fact expected to perform the Anushtanams as much as a male devotee. And after a particular point of time, once you're seasoned into the Anushtanam practices, you can take the next level of Dikshay, what we call as the Puja Dikshay, where you will be given a Shivalingam, pretty much similar to the same way as any male devotee gets. You will be initiated into daily Shiva Puja exactly the same way that male devotees get to do. You can visit the Adinams on any day as the male devotees come. You can perform your Shiva Puja there during such festivals where all of us get together to perform our Shiva Puja. When the Sannidhanam himself comes and takes a darshan of all his devotees performing the Shiva Puja, you can participate in all the Trivashaka Mutrodal or Devara Parayanam and all that. You can sit there and participate it amongst other women devotees. You can get the prasadam from the Acharya. You can participate in Kuru Pujais. You can participate in festivals where when there is a procession, people go around chanting from the Tirumurais. I am not sure where exactly you see the difference. You can participate in Maheshwara Pujais. Yeah, so everything as a male devotee can do can be practiced here also. I'm certainly in depth to answer because it involves my own Acharya Pedam. You can take my email ID and get in touch with me. And if there are any more doubts on this front, I'll be more than happy to clarify it too. And I'm very happy that you're taking your Shaiva Siddhantam classes and you're associated with Dharmapura Adinam. Sumitra Veeraraghavan Madam, can we have our ancestors' pictures in puja shelf or room? In the room, yes, but not between your gods. There is a difference, and that has got to be, respected. From Kasturibai Sundaresan, a few words on performing Shiva Puja at home, please. Can a woman who's still in her menstruating phase of life receive Diksha and perform the Shiva Puja? The Diksha for your Anushtanams are given irrespective of your age. I think a minimum age of say 12 or 14 is what is required, and then you can start performing your Shaiva Anushtanam. Your Shiva Puja, you can be initiated, but you will have to think about who's going to perform the puja in days of your menstrual cycle. Yeah, if you have someone, even after receiving your Shiva Puja Diksha, during your menstrual times, you're requested, in fact, to perform the whole puja at a mental level. You will have to do the Manasika Puja, yeah, even on your menstruating days, because your manas can never be polluted. I mean, there is nothing that stops you from praying to God from within. Yeah, so that is how it is. If you have someone who can take up your puja and do it, not just during your menstrual times, but even during other times, like when you have we do have these times when there is a birth or a death in our family. We generally don't do our puja and other things, right? So, and in such circumstances, you'll have to have a person who can do the puja on your behalf. Yeah, so there are norms for it, and so if you think you can do that, well, you're welcome to. Any more questions? Fine. Okay, I think that's it for the day. Tomorrow, we'll be discussing about offerings to be made, preparations for your puja, and how you do a simple puja, and conducting yourself in temples. Thank you and have a good night.